Alright, so for the first game of this test, it looks like LSAT has decided to throw pretty much everything they possibly could at you. So there's a couple of things that we have to keep track of here. So we've got a bunch of animals that we're going to have to display kind of one at a time, or at least in somewhat of a sequence. And on top of that, though, we have to keep track of an out. So there's going to be 5 positions to the sequence, but there are 8 animals in total, which means that there are also going to be 3 animals on the outside, so we can leave 3 spaces here. Now, on top of that, we also have to keep track of types. So there's kittens and puppies. The 3 kittens happen to be F, G, H, and J. All of these guys are kittens. And then we also have the puppies R, S, T, W that we have to keep track of here. So I guess from there, let's take a look at the rules themselves. So the first rule says the first and fifth must hold kittens. So I guess that's good to know. 1 and 5 will have to be Ks, and we can kind of plug in placeholder subscripts there. Next, T cannot be next to any kitten. So I guess we can say that T, who is a puppy, cannot be next to any kitten, which really means that right away we know that there's no way to place T in 2 or in 4 because they would be next to a kitten. So really T can only go into 3 or out. In fact, if T was in 3, that'd be kind of powerful because that means that there's no kittens next to him, so 2 and 4 would then have to be puppies. So that's definitely something to keep in mind because, I mean, that's restrictive and it's influential. So this might be something that might be worth exhausting. Let's keep going. I guess let's kind of leave a reminder. T also has to be 3 or out. Next, either G or H, but not both, must be included. So we can say of G/H, we're going to have 1 in and 1 out. So we can reserve a placeholder on the outside for one of G or H, but I guess we can also say that we cannot have both G and H on the outside. One of them is going to have to go in. And lastly, if W is included, then G must be in 2. So if we have a W, who is a puppy, then we have to have a G in the second position. So contrapositive then says that if we don't have G in the second position, then we simply cannot have a W, who again happens to be a puppy. Now, in terms of implications, well, actually, wait a minute. We know G happens to be a kitten, right? We can even leave a little, I guess, a superscript here to keep track of that. So now that means that if W is in, then there's really no way to have a T, because if W was in, you would have had to have a G in 2, but that means T can no longer go in 3, or I guess we can go the other way. If T is in, then there's no way to have a W, because then W would force G2 and that wouldn't work. So between T and W, I guess they cannot both ever be in, so I guess we can say at least one of them is out, but we can play it through because, as we said, this might be worth exhausting. So what we can do here is we can try both possibilities for T and kind of play it out. So we can say either the T is going to be in, or we know that the T is going to be out. Now in the top scenario, if the T is in and of course it has to go in 3, then we said the puppies would we have to have 2 more puppies next to the T, but then we can take it a step further because now we can't have a W, right? Because if we were to have a W, then G would have to go into 2 and that would break. So W now has to be the puppy who is out, which now means that the other puppies, R and S, are gonna have to be in. Now, I guess we don't really know which one's which because, I mean, there's really no restrictions on R and S, so I guess that's taken care of. Now, we still have to have one of G or H on the outside, and I guess the other of G or H is going to have to go in. So actually, okay, so that means that one of 1 or 5 would have to be a G or an H, and I guess what does that leave us with? That's just F and J. So the other kitten would have to be one of F or J, which means one of F or J would also have to be out, right? I guess we can even just do this. We can't have both G and H out, but one of them will be out, which means that the last kitten who is out will have to be one of F or J. Next, now, in the second scenario, if T happens to be out, I guess the question is, what does that tell us, if anything? And I guess it doesn't really restrict us too much because W could be in, but at the same time it doesn't have to, because W could still be out, in which case we'll just have, I guess, more kittens in, and that's viable. Obviously we'll have to have one of G or H still out, but I don't think we can do much more with this. So either way, this is a pretty good start. Essentially, one of these two templates will always have to be in play. And then from there, let's take a look at the questions. So the first question here, as usual, is our exclusion question. So we do this by the rules. So first rule was that 1 and 5 will have to be kittens, and those are F, G, H, and J. So A looks fine, B looks good, C looks good, D is good, E has taffy in the first position, so that certainly does not work. Next, T is not supposed to go next to any of the kittens, so let's take a look. Answer choice A doesn't have a T, so we're fine. B has T next to puppies, we're good. C has T next to puppies, we're good. D, you'll notice that T is next to G, which certainly is not a puppy, so answer choice D gets disqualified. Next, one of G or H, but not both, must be included. So A has just H, B, you'll notice, has both G and H, so that doesn't work, and C just has a G. And lastly, if W is there, then G must be in 2. So between A and C, now A doesn't have a W, so this rule doesn't really apply, but for answer choice C, we have a W, but G is not the second position, so that disqualifies C from our options, and then the best answer to number 1 then becomes answer choice A. Next, question number 2. So this one's a local question, which says, if W happens to be included. Well, if W is included, right away we know that we're going to be stuck in the second scenario, right? Because we know that in the first scenario, W had to be out. So in the second scenario, I guess we can play this out. If we happen to have a W, I guess we don't know where the W goes, but we'll definitely have to have a T there. And we also know that if we have a W, then G has to go into 2. So we can definitely say that G will go second. On top of that, we know that one of G or H has to be out. So that would mean that H is the one who is out. We still have to maintain our kittens in 1 and 5. So since we have 3 kittens in and H is a kitten who is already out, I guess that means that F and J will take out the first and the last positions. And I guess 3 and 4 will then have to be what looks like puppies, since the kittens are spoken for, and we're going to have one more puppy out. And I don't think we know who that is, right? So W is definitely going to be in somewhere here. So I guess we can even leave a W kind of as a reminder here. But yeah, I guess that's as far as we can take it. The question asks, the display cannot include who? And I guess we know that T and H are definitely out. So answer choice B is H, and becomes the best answer here. Next, number 3, if 3 puppies are included, then which of the following must be true? So if we have to have 3 puppies in, so that's consistent with the top scenario, I guess that's worth recognizing, but arguably it's also consistent with the bottom scenario, because in the bottom scenario, I mean, we haven't really resolved kind of this last out position, or these 3. Now, first of all, if we have to have 3 puppies on the inside, that pretty much means that they're going to have to go into 2, 3, and 4 respectively. It also means that we're only going to have 1 puppy out and 2 of the kittens in. Moreover, well, actually, hang on, wait a minute. We know that G can no longer go in second because G is a kitten, and the second position is now reserved for a puppy, which means that if G is not in 2, then W certainly would have to be out, which means that our 3 puppies on the inside, actually I guess that resolves that, doesn't it? Our 3 puppies on the inside would then have to be T, R, and S. So we're going to have T here, and then R and S will split 2 and 4 just because we're not allowed to have T next to any of the kittens. And from there, I don't think we know much more in terms of the kittens. Obviously, one of G or H is still out, and the other one is in. I guess let's see what we can do. The question asks, which of the following now must be true? A, G is second, and no, that in fact can't be true at the moment. B, R is second. Now that could be true, but we don't know that it has to be, so that seems questionable at best. C, S is second. That's in fact logically identical. We don't know which one of those 2 is going to go second. Next, T is third. That definitely has to be true. So best answer to number 3 is D. And just in case, answer choice E, W is third. No, that in fact can't happen. So best answer is D, as we said. Next, number 4. If F is displayed next to J, then, well, once again, let's see what we can do with that information. So if F and J are consecutive in this particular scenario, now, I guess, do we know which direction that would end up going in? Or I guess the positioning even. And that seems a little bit flexible because, well, first of all, okay, so we do know that if F and J are together, first of all, that locks us into the second template. So going back to the templates, the first one would not work because we only have 2 kittens and they are, well, they're far apart. So if F and J are together, that forces us into scenario B, effectively, which means that T is going to have to be out, and then G or H is going to take one extra position. In fact, if F and J are both in and they are consecutive, there's only going to be one more kitten remaining, right? So the one other kitten that's going to remain is effectively going to be, well, the other of G or H. Now for F and J to be consecutive, I guess what we can definitely say is they're going to have to be up against the wall in a sense. Either they're going to go into 4 and 5, or they're going to go into 1 and 2, and then the other kitten would go on the other side, which means, I guess one thing we can definitely say is that the third position is going to be a puppy, just because we can't set out 3 kittens in 1, 2, 5. Well, we'll have to make it 1, 2, 5 or 1, 4, 5. Now beyond that, I mean, the worst case scenario, we can always split the FJ block into 2 possibilities and kind of see where that takes us. But let's see, maybe we have enough information to answer the question. The question asks, if that's true, the display cannot include who. So who cannot be in? Well, T definitely has to be out. But yeah, going through the answer choices looks like that's not really an option, unfortunately. So apparently somebody else has to be out. Well, I guess the one other kind of rule that we didn't really fully account for is this last one. If we have a W, actually, yeah, that's going to be a problem. If we have a W, then we would have had to have a G in 2. But the thing is, that's not going to work because if the G was to go into second, then there's no way to make F and J next to each other because we would only have 2 kittens remaining and they would have to go into 1 and 5, which means we can't trigger this guy right here. W can't really be in anymore because if W is in, it would create something that would, well, it would break. So that's your answer right there. The question is what the display cannot include, and that would be answer choice E. W at the moment could not be included. Now the worst case scenario here is you could have always just split the board into kind of those 2 possibilities for the FJ block. Slightly dirtier kind of solution, but that still would have worked and it wouldn't have been too bad in terms of timing. Next, number 5. If J is not included, which of the following will? Let's take a look. First of all, if J happens to be out, so J happens to be a kitten, I guess we also know that one of G or H naturally would also have to be out, which means we're only going to have 1 puppy on the outside. Now, wait a minute. So if we only have 1 puppy on the outside and 2 kittens on the outside as well, first of all, we only have 2 kittens remaining to go in, and they're going to have to go into 1 and 5. So our 3 puppies are all going to have to be in. So they're going to take 2, 3, and 4. Moreover, I guess once again, we can't really do this. We can't put G into 2, which means we can't have W selected, because if W was in, you'd have to have G in 2, which currently can't work. So W currently is going to have to be on the outside, which now forces everybody else to go in, because now we're going to have T on the inside alongside R and S, who are basically going to swap between 2 and 4. Now from there, we're still going to have 1 of G or H, and I guess F is going to be in on the other side of 1 and 5. Let's see what we can do. The question asks, what could be true? A, G goes 4th, and no, currently the 4th position is R or S. Next, H is 5th, and actually maybe, so the other of G or H seemingly could go into position 5. This seems reasonably safe. Answer choice C, R is 3rd. Could we place the R 3rd? And no, currently that's T. Next, can we place S 3rd? No, same problem, that's T. Can we place W 4? And no, that has to be one of R or S. So that essentially, oh, whoops, I crossed off the wrong one. B was a viable answer choice and is the best answer to question number 5. Next. Question 6. If S is not included in the display, which of the following must be true? Well, I guess we kind of run out of room here. So if S is out, let's kind of plug this in. So if we have S on the outside, I guess the first question is, what does that tell us? Well, actually, if S is out, that means that this top scenario would not possibly work because we know that we have to have R and S next to the T, which means if S is out, that forces us into scenario B, and that means that T is also going to have to be out. Now, we still have to accommodate one of G or H, one of these two kittens on the inside, so that means that the outside is now completely locked out, everybody else gets forced in. So now, wait a minute, W has to be in, which means if W is in, then G is going to get locked into position 2. So this isn't really G or H anymore, this is just going to have to be straight H on the outside. We still have to have F or J, so we can plug them in accordingly on the inside. And I guess these two positions would then have to be our leftover puppies. We don't really know which one's which. I guess we're just going to have W and looks like R in those two slots. So the question itself asks, which of the following must be true? A, F is first. I mean, it could, but it doesn't seem like it has to. Next, F is fifth, same problem. Next, answer choice C, G is second, and yes, that would definitely have to be true. The best answer to question number 6 then is C.